This is Senate Appropriations, and we're continuing our work on the FY 2023 budget. And we have Stephanie Barrett from Joint Fiscal who will continue our walkthrough. We did get through the language yesterday, but we've got to go back and revisit some sections.
Well, what I thought we do today is go through the G sections, which now is a mix of language and money.
Okay.
And it's our foray into the one chunk of it, one-time money. It's the combination of ARPA and general fund, and then if we still have time today, we will switch to B1100, which is also general fund one-time and language combined.
And the only other thing I want to put the committee on notice, and that is H159 is going to be coming in here. What we have is an economic development bill that it's a House bill, but it's really a strike all and it's economic development. So what we have is the House had nothing for economic development, but they put it on workforce. Our folks have had economic development and nothing for workforce. The House has nothing on housing, and we had said we wanted to put that housing ownership money and do it in the budget. So we have, and poor Stephanie has been trying to crosswalk. This is how much money you've got, and it doesn't matter how you split it. It's how much you've got for workforce and economic development total. And so we're going to have to ultimately resolve that as part of the budget process. And then there's some other areas, but 159 is certainly one of the biggest influences. And then of course we had passed out some bills and stripped out the appropriations for us to come back. And
those are on the, they're in the total that you just mentioned. So it's 70 or 38, but they're also on the tracking list because you have actually passed the bill making you account for them.
Yeah, so and people tend to forget, but we had a parent-child center bill. And the only thing that I would link back, and you know, as we consider this, and I know there's another bill in the health and welfare to create an office of ombudsman in DCF. I will simply remind people that we had the University of Vermont look at our child welfare system. They reviewed actual cases, and they said that as a state, Vermont does not invest in prevention and support of families. I thought we were doing a good job compared to other states, and they were suggesting, and parent-child centers were one of the entities. And I know from visiting the one in St. Johnsbury, they've been working much more closely with DCF around the goal of keeping families together. And so we're going to have to take those different proposals, look at it, but also try to connect some of the information that we've had, as I say, from studies or examinations of what it is and where we should put our first dollar. And I know that certainly all of us are concerned about the current status of our child welfare system, the fact that we don't have a replacement for Woodside, what that has meant, what it means in the other area, which we've talked about, and that is the inadequacy of children's mental health services and the extent to which that is influencing kids in DCF custody. So it's our challenge is that all of that work is coming here, and we're going to have to try to make the most informed and try to take advantage of what information we have, because we're going to be making choices. And in this world of false dichotomy, if you say, I can't support that, you almost become, you know, well, if you don't support that, then you don't care about the environment. If you don't support that, you don't care about kids. If you don't support that, you don't care about whatever. And it puts people on the Appropriations Committee into sometimes not an attractive place to be, but one that's inherent in the job we have ahead of us. So it's sobering, and I just want to state that before Stephanie starts working because we are gonna have to set priorities. And you want to do this, and if you decide to do this, then it means you can't do something else.
When will we start on Monday?
We were thinking about 1:30. I think that was what we talked about.
1 or 1:30.
Yeah, 1 or 1:30. Probably easier to start earlier and because you have teaching, don't you?
I have teaching
At 4. So 1 o'clock,
Do you want to go 1 to 3:30?
yeah, something like that. That'll be
What to when?
3:30 remotely. I might come in, I'm not sure. Depends on, I have to make care arrangements too, Senator Sears.
It's, you know,
It's,
nothing
no,
to
it's,
do with it. It's just, I was looking at Chris Pearson. I wish I could appear on Tuesday that way.
yeah,
And, you know, unfortunately, I don't have COVID. I mean, fortunately, I don't have COVID.
yeah. right.
But that's
Yeah, it's
how they
crazy
wrote that
that
rule that way.
Right, yeah,
Doesn't make sense.
well, we should revisit that next session. Because there's no reason why if we're allowing witnesses to testify, we're allowing people to quarantine when they don't know if they have COVID, but we're saying somebody who has an extremely pressing family reason can't appear virtually.
And I think technology is certainly a big influence because it used to be, you didn't have the ability to kind of have the, even though it's remote, you're very much present in part of that. So Monday afternoon we'll reconvene. And with that said, Stephanie, maybe you can bring some light to
So
this
before we
otherwise dismal introduction.
So I just want to step back on one thing that we got hung up on yesterday. We went through the C, D, and E sections over the past several days. We got hung up on that section in E318 that was the reference back to the childcare CC evaluation. And that is, it's the formatting of the drafting that's incorrect in the bill, that that's existing language in law, and they were simply moving the date, but it appeared as if it was brand new language being created in the bill. And so we'll figure out what the actual date is for the report on the evaluation, and maybe either move the recommendation to move the date or to revisit the structure of the evaluation once we get the financing report and the governance stuff.
They moved the date for the October report.
It had a January, it's not clear to me yet if it was a January 2023 date or a January 2024 date. But the intent on the House side was simply to move that date forward in time.
Can they move the whole language?
Well, they created it as if it was brand new language. They didn't create it as an amendment to existing language, and that creates the confusion. That's why we got, like, why is it brand
We
new?
spent all that time on it, but it still begs the question about an evaluation and a
And so you-
sequence, and I guess that is
So you
still
may
time.
want to structure your approach to it, both with a date and is this the evaluation structure we need? Come back with a recommendation if does it stay this way or does it change?
Well,
I don't know if we would make that
The other
charge to, but.
The other thing it creates as an issue around all this, if in the rates that the childcare facilities get, it depends on what star they are, because the acuity, the higher your star you give them. If what they've done is basically froze the program and I gave printed at least one copy of, they have criteria by which they want to change the STARS program within the childcare division.
But that was that an amendment to the existing language? It was underlined.
So that's the confusion. The only thing that should have been underlined was the date.
Okay, so that star stuff was already in there.
That is pre-existing
All right,
language.
so then, in light of the timing, then I think we do need some language
You-
around the evaluation particularly.
You want someone to give you a recommendation back on whether or not the evaluation as it's drafted now should be updated, given the landscape of reports coming out of the
Including the
stars.
stars.
Well,
Yeah.
because STARS relates directly how much each provider gets paid, each childcare facility gets paid because it depends on your star. But also if we're redoing that now, do we want to weigh in with?
But they haven't done the evaluations way out in the future, so we have time in between.
Right, you have time to think about the structure of the
So now's the
evaluation.
time to put in that language to say, go back and reevaluate this, what,
Yes.
reevaluate your evaluation.
And just to.
What
so-
other good news do you have?
So that was one thing to cross off the list. We went through the C, D, and E sections, and we're gonna go into the G sections, and you might say there's an F in between there. And I think we're gonna recommend that you actually carry the appropriations for Pay Act in the F section of the bill, so that there is a place for, in case the Pay Act bill itself does not
I
make
think
it as a bill on its own,
I
it often
suspect it
lands in this bill.
Mhm.
And so we will put the appropriation in this bill as the holding spot for the rest of Pay Act if it needs to. Or it can leave this bill if Pay Act bill is actually moving.
And we've had to do that.
Yeah.
Other times.
So now we're in the G section and you have a packet in front of you of language. And we have mirrored the same structure that we did last year when we were doing the ARPA funds. And it's a combination of ARPA and other state funds that we're usually referencing here, appropriating here. So G 100 is the intent around these 5 major categories of expenditure.
And I would like to point out, in the communications from the administration, they seem to have shrunk G 300 to Vermont's economy.
Or just economic
Or
development.
economic development. And if you know, our heading that we put in is much broader because it includes workforce, it includes community, and the economy. So in a number of the communications that we've received from the administration, they have redefined that first bucket and made it a much more narrow category. And we are still saying that that is the category that we want it titled, and there will be investments in workforce and in communities and so forth that will go there. So, but it's just something to point out in terms of the communications that we've had relative to both the BAA and ultimately the budget.
So I'm still on page 1 of this packet, and G200 is new language where we just have reporting requirement on the status updates of coronavirus relief funds, both midway through the off session and then
Remember,
early.
I'll do that, Chris,
Yes.
for the G section.
Oh, you didn't have one? Sorry.
No.
You sure? Try to computer.
Thank you.
Good. I'm glad to be of service to you, Senator Sears. I know, it's fine.
So between what you had passed last year and this bill when it's passed, you will have pretty much allocated the entirety of that 1.05 billion of ARPA dollars. And that they have, longer time to be spent. And so the idea is that we would understand the status of how the money is flowing out. And we expect over the next couple of years, you may have areas where projects that we're funding end up not being eligible, or for whatever timing reasons, the money needs to revert. So that's just, for the next year, is setting up the structure on reporting on the ARPA dollars. And so now we are in G 300, which is investments in Vermont's economy, workforce, and communities.
It's hard to see what they could propose here in terms of, the HVAC investments, for instance. How could you not say that's transformative and ARPA eligible?
Oh, well, because it wasn't on their list.
Right.
Haven't you
I mean,
got-
it's not economic development, but seems to me, right?
It's sort of like beauty's in the eye of the beholder, Senator Bruce. It's sort of like I'll define it as I want to define it, or as expansive as I want to.
Air that doesn't transmit disease, I would think would be pretty much number one.
So what this does is, tells us what the House did.
This is what the House did, and so section A, subsection A in G300 is this 4.6 of ARPA, state fiscal relief appropriations, and you see them listed 1 through 6, so it's 7, no, sorry, 1 through 6 here. It flows over to the top of the next page. The governor would have had $100 million of his capital grants and BETA program and another piece of, it's slipping out of my mind, another piece of economic development, the grand list enhancement proposals. Those are in the Senate side in that H159, not those particular programs, but the funding related would be in that H159. And so in the Senate's version of G300, we might want to make reference to the other legislation that's carrying ARPA funds, much like when we get to it, you'll see that they make reference to the H703 for the workforce pieces.
You know, Stephanie, as we go through, we're reviewing what the House did, but we may obviously go in and make some changes. I'm looking at, you know, up to 20 million for the State House expansion.
So as we're on subsection A, 5 and 6, those are relatively modest and small numbers that you would have probably tried to put over on the general fund side on the Senate construct. The House did not do that, but those are fairly small. It's a burden to go through the process of getting the ARPA funds. And so right now on our list, I'm sort of carrying those move to general fund as a question mark when we get down to the decisions on the money. If you decide to fund those at all.
That's the question.
Yeah.
On 2A, on that second page, I thought the courts were already reopened.
Oh,
Not
well,
totally.
not totally, no.
Orleans, Grand Isle, Essex, or amongst those that are open.
Essex is not,
Completely.
Grand Isle.
Well, Grand Isle can't have jury trials.
So is that because of the HVAC system?
So the
Not
HVAC,
totally.
the HVAC,
Someplace.
Can I
No,
ask?
that we've got two different things on court reopening.
yeah,
One is B, which is HVAC, and then there's another 5 million, a little bit more in contingent appropriation for court HVAC. And then this other amount of the $1.5 million is a different state reopening cost.
So
but there's only 14 of them.
It's 2 sub big A, 1.539851.
So,
Oh, yeah, see, does that include the sheriff?
So
no,
No,
So
that's different.
on the
That's
third-
securities.
on the third page, you have the 1.1 million for HVAC, and then you have 600, but what's the difference between?
It's just how the House covered the entire cost of ask for the HVAC in county courthouses. So the entire cost is, I think it's 5.7. They only had in the money, so to speak, in actual available ARPA, in the end, the 605 that you're seeing here in 2 sub B. They put the other 5.1 because we have a contingent position that we created in the BAA. If general fund money comes in higher than expected, but to the tune of roughly $54 million, then you will have created $25 million of additional ARPA capacity because you're going to swap out money. And so they placed the HVAC in that contingent position.
and according to the testimony we got, between the 605 and the 5.1, that would
Yes.
fully fund the HVAC need in our court systems.
All 14?
That's what they told us when they came in.
That is what they told us.
Yes, that was their testimony.
But that 5.1 is at risk. We don't
Contingent.
know it's there until July. And if we don't hit that
Okay.
level of overage on the revenue forecast, it's the first thing listed on the contingent. It's before the State House. So it's you know, the probability of that is higher than the State House piece.
And does this leave the court, the judiciary in control of who gets the first? If it doesn't all come in, who gets the HVAC systems first?
So it's an up to, so they would be deciding, you know, if you don't get the whole 5.1, they would have to be making priority decisions within that on the HVAC investments.
So, Bobby, you had a question about this?
No, just that seems like an awful lot of money to give to the court systems, which they were working fine before COVID and all. Now,
Well, they weren't, I mean, this is the same thing with the schools. There were schools, when we did, remember we did the program for HVAC in the schools, Efficiency Vermont ran it. And when they had, you know, gone around and done the evaluations of all the schools, there were a bunch of districts that thought they had air handling, that the air handling hadn't been working for 5 or 10 years.
yeah, but that's a school district's own problem.
Right, but I mean, the court's the same thing. They go in, they do their job, they think that there's a proper air handling system,
So this is a known fact.
Well, some of it's county-owned buildings too.
and they're historic buildings.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be a bummer putting that.
So,
And I just want to, when you get to the B1100 section, this is ARPA dollars. I'm stepping away from the judiciary courthouses, but back to the reopening. You will see other general fund reopening money as well, to go with, in the same as this 1.5.
so, on the safe reopening here, what is the 155? What's it for?
I will get the detail, and there's a sheet on it.
Is that
And the House made a distinction between what was ARPA and what was general fund.
I don't know, I don't think that's security. Did they put more money into security?
I will find out if some of it's security, but this is in the one-time section, so I'm not, it may be, security may be a part of it, but it wouldn't be the ARPA piece. When we get to the general fund piece, we'll take a look.
All right. Do we want to, that's interesting. Is that why the institutions went over to Historical Society to visit?
Yep.
But they're not funding it in the capital bill.
I know, that's a little odd.
They're broad jurisdiction.
Oh, I see. My question becomes one of, do you want to just keep all this money open for the time being?
And just walk through it and
And walk
understand what
through
it,
it, and
the
not-
language that goes with it.
Yeah.
And we'll do it in spreadsheet form when you get to the point of
I think it'll be
being,
better to do it that way.
but you'll be familiar with the, you know, in the first walkthrough a little bit.
Okay. So we've got,
And the number 4, the 750, right, these are expenses that staff working group is deemed, they're related to telehealth that we think can belong in the ARPA tab. You will see that the other bill, the H bill, has another $360,000 in it to make up the lost revenue because of the telehealth piece. These are like the IT system and other COVID expenses that related to in the OPR world.
and just committee, remember, we had other legislation that waived telemedicine. We were waiving the licensing fee or reducing it in some cases. And so that's had an impact on the revenues. And one occupation can't subsidize another. So this is what OPR said was needed to make up those lost revenues. So I'm just stating that it's what was driving this is a decision we made, a policy decision around telemedicine and how we treated the regulated professions involved there. 5 is ag field days, and I mean, we did that last year. Last year we gave them more money, but this year I think the opening should be better. So 6, more money to ag.
6, I think we ought to put a question mark.
What about that? That seems,
150,000 to come up with a plan in case we get disrupted.
I put a question mark.
all right, okay. We're not committing to anything, but what you're saying is that's one that really perhaps we could find a better use for the 150.
Well,
You know, because Senator Starr knows that our organic farms are gonna have to make some upgrades in order to get a market to stay in business, and that brings a price tag about 200,000. So the question is, do we really want to keep our organic farmers in business, or do we want an action plan on state food security?
Well, the part I like is
Maybe.
making sure we have an eligible consultant. And
So-
I didn't know maybe Phil was eligible.
Depends, 150.
No, I just put a question mark on
But
it.
I think that might be one of those choices in terms of our ag industry. Where we would want to, if we had some one-time money, where we would want to direct. And then we're on to contingent, and during times of disruption to national food distribution chain. I wonder who put that in.
I don't know.
All right, contingent appropriations, again, this gets back to what they had done. And that is the HVAC, because they didn't have enough money, and then 20 million,
So this is a mini waterfall?
sort of. Contingent, we don't use that term, Senator Baruch.
It's
It's
contingent.
contingent.
Yeah, if you use
$20 for state house expansion.
Well, maybe I'll get a committee room if we do that, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yours is probably worth about $1 million.
I mean, I'm just walking.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Come on, I hate to tell you, but we gotta keep plowing through this. I know the 20 million.
I oppose that,
I know.
for the record.
We might as well take that out.
So can I just ask, are these
Nay,
in a literal order where?
They
it's-
are,
Okay.
because we don't know
I
how
agree with
much.
Senator Sears.
or we would put it at such a low that we never get to it. We'd have to have a surplus of about 5
Run it
million.
up the flag
Yeah,
and leave it there for us to go get.
okay,
So
so.
we just take it out right now.
Let's keep walking through, okay,
Okay.
committee.
If you decide not to do the state house, you still might want to put something in that capacity, because it may be there. So
All
that's
right,
a,
50,000.
no, I mean,
no,
you
no,
might
no.
alter it to the
We
state
may
house.
want to
for-
change the sequence and what's on that sequence.
dollar.
Yeah, you would have $20 million of potential capacity. Do you want to decide what that gets spent on? Yeah, if it's not the state house.
And we might have a very large contingent and make the state house number 25.
You don't even want me to have a committee.
No,
I don't care.
You go meet in the hallway
Well,
for a
they're
year.
talking about, I keep hearing it referred to.
why
as
don't you have a
expanded
committee room instead of some of those lounges that they put? Why does an ag go up and claim one of those lounges?
You'll take one.
Yeah.
You'll never know the difference.
Where are the lounges?
Third floor and the fourth floor is one.
Oh,
you
third
couldn't get
floor,
up and
third,
down
They're
the-
on the third floor. It's the old natural resources room and the
Yeah, go
old
take one.
appropriations
Just take it.
room, right?
Put your, put a sign up,
House
write
appropriations.
write down,
is allowed.
Senate Appropriations, room 62.
I went to go in our lounge and the house is taking that over.
I know.
They took everything.
So perhaps you could
So
go,
just don't take it.
so general workforce.
So now, the only actual,
Just a second, okay, all right, it's gorgeous. We need to get back to, C.
so C is, subsection C here is general fund workforce appropriation in the C section. The only general fund appropriation in this bill is this 1.5 for the 802 opportunities. Bump up from 50 to 75 for income eligibility for the 802 opportunity. In sub 1 though, so that the full picture of workforce in the house is there, they're referencing the amount of money that's included for the plethora of items that are in 703, which is just under $19 million general fund and $8 million of redirected ARPA money and $15 million of education fund money is what's appropriated in the H703 House passed version of the bill, all for trades, CTE, healthcare workforce, some general training, the server and learn, the youth. So those are, it's just this provides you a total picture of the workforce investment that the House did.
I heard from Senator Sorokin that VSAC was quite surprised what they had been given in 8703. So, and also,
It's
it's
what they asked for,
what?
going from 50 to 75.
No, I'm on workforce initiatives.
Okay.
No, I'm talking about particularly some of the nursing and AHACs are saying, wait a minute, you've already got the structure that you've used for years. Why are you creating something else? And the more you create, the more disjuncture you create between eligibility standards and duplication and so forth. So this is an area where there's a lot of work. So it's just, and that gets back to my earlier comment, the House focused on workforce and our focused on economic development. They both want to spend the same amount of money, which was probably double what's available. So there's an awful lot of work to
Reconciliation.
reconcile. Yeah.
The other point I'd make here is I think Senator Sorokin would like to bring the 1.5 of 802 opportunities into the total work of workforce that committee is working on. So you may see that in the H-159 bill when it gets to us. And then it's a decision of which bill it goes in. And when we get to the D part, which is the community economic development pieces that are in this bill, which are the 6 million for brownfields and the 3 million, which is $2 million less than the governor requested for the BOREC, the outdoor recreation grant program. They're in this bill in the House. Senator Sorokin would also like to move those into the H-159 world. I think you'll see a recommendation from him to do that. But I would.
And then we're gonna put it all back into the budget when we negotiate it.
I don't know, or we would, if the appropriations themselves on the Senate side move into that bill, we would still want to reference the total expenditure of that bill here, much like they did in 703, so that the whole picture can be sort of keeping the construct.
Well,
of
certainly the
these.
brownfields is, people. The other connection here is the BOREC of the governor's recommend was 5 million. We had some discussion this morning in transportation, and there's a desire to, that really helps develop our statewide network of trails. Senator Sears or folks from Pownell who came up, they had gotten a grant. It was Linda Martin was there. It was
That's the 3 million.
the 3 million, and so the question is, should we try to get to the governor's level? And just preliminary, knowing that money's still moving around, transportation was saying rather than charging stations in the wilderness, which would be at fishing access, whatever, and that could be financed under the ACCD travel and tourism connection, which is in 10 million. They would really like to see, rather than the charging stations, go to 2 million of that would go to the BOREC, and then 1 million would go to some of the climate change public transit.
So this would go to 5.
Well, that was, I'm just briefing you, but that was, the governor's proposed is 5, and Senate Transportation had discussion and felt it would be desirable to move this to 5 if possible, and how you would fund it is not.
We'll get to those when we keep going
Like,
along
you
through
need
the
to
plan
take that out of
section.
the State House expansion.
Yeah, well, no, that's contingent, which means countdown to Nirvana on that one. So we're gonna keep going.
Okay. So now we're moving out of the G300 into G400, which is the housing section. And the housing section is what you see here, just it's the $50 million that is in ARPA money, very similar to what we did to VHCB. On the Senate side, we have passed 2 housing bills, S210 and S226, and we have allocated ARPA money in those bills, not for VHCB, but for VHIP and S210. And
But
then,
they had 20 million in their budget.
yes, so the governor had $70 million in the housing in 23, and the same $20 million in 22 that's in S210. The House has capacity for the 20 million in S210. They did not leave capacity for anything that was in S226, although I believe they're searching for that capacity now. And so the construct of trying to give a target to Senate economic development would lower the VHCB amount here from 50 to 40 and reference the 20 million in S210 and the other $20 million that's in 226 for the missing middle and the other two components that are in this other piece of B have been another piece. So your housing structure would look different. It does anticipate that you would do the same $10 million of general fund or general fund light, which is the property transfer tax money that the House did to housing on top of this 50 million.
On that housing issue, where it says, it spells it out, about recovery residences and housing available for farm workers. This very morning, we had a hearing and it seems that some farm labor people live in the same house as the farmer. And the way this is set up, that doesn't qualify. It has to be a separate, according to Joe, the president of Farm Bureau, some farmers that hire help that live in the farmhouse with them, like if they wanted to add on to the room to make it bigger, because many times it's a small room. There's no, so I didn't know, can you do language changes?
That says housing available to farm workers and refugees. Now, the one thing that I thought we heard from Gus is ARPA could not be, many of the farm workers are here undocumented, and they had to use general fund to deal with that population, not ARPA. So I'm just,
So this is ARPA money.
this is ARPA money.
I'll check more with this.
But I think if there's, the issue that you're talking about could in fact relate to general fund if, in other words, if someone wanted to get their own home improved, and say, and I want to add, I don't know how they would treat that. So we have to get some discussion from Gus.
Yeah, I'll chase that down.
When in fact, the housing is actually shared housing as opposed to oftentimes trailers or another house is provided. I don't know if the intent was ever to help the farmer improve their own home.
We never even talked about that, but it was the tenant housing, the farm worker housing that we spent, but never thought about the farmer worker living in the farmhouse, but that's the way it was at our place. And when we used to have at least just one hired man, he lived right in the house with us like an uncle or whatever. But anyways, I'll chase that down with Gus.
I don't know if the intent was to provide housing improvements to the
owner.
No, I don't think so. And that's what you're asking.
Well,
in other words, access assistance for your own home to get upgraded by saying, here's the room for the hired man.
well,
And I could use a better kitchen or a new bathroom.
Joe was talking about most of these Tibbetts, the president of Farm Bureau, that some of these farmhouses are huge. And, they've got 4 or 5 bedrooms, and if there's a single person working for the farmer, they don't have a separate house, but,
I can understand there might be times for improvement. The question, I guess, then is, are they just automatically precluded, or do they have to meet that, in fact, the money and the improvement is limited to that actual space that is necessary? And I guess Gus would have to help us with that.
I'll check.
But this is ARPA, and
That wouldn't work.
and ARPA, that's why we did some general fund, remember?
We did
And-
BAA
Yeah,
and
so
upside last
not
year.
even, that language,
And then
now, not every farm worker is undocumented certainly, or,
and you have 10 million running additional in, B11, B811 of the bill through the property transfer tax, which is flexible dollars.
so we'll keep going. To broadband,
So broadband, so the House split the broadband, they provided the same total as the governor, which is $95 million even. They split it between the ARPA Capital Projects Fund and the ARPA State Fiscal Release Fund, and the ARPA Capital Funds in the House construct are appropriated in the capital bill. Broadband is an automatic eligible use of the ARPA capital funds, and the recommendation we have in terms of, and this was all part of setting the target for economic development, is to move the entire $95 million of broadband into the ARPA capital fund because it's an eligible use and
makes it clean.
it makes it clean, and then we would move, it's a target of 35 million for the H5 18, I can't remember the number of that bill, but the municipal sustainability buildings bill that's in Senate Natural Resources right now, that $35 million target would be fitting into the,
It's 113 million, isn't it?
the total ARPA capital funds are 113 million. And so you would use 95 for broadband.
And 35 of the others,
No,
130.
35 would come into the state fiscal, it changes source. It would no longer be capital money. It become regular ARPA state fiscal relief money in the construct. And then, in the capital money, you would have the 95 for broadband, the roughly 16 for libraries, which do fit the description of public use for the capital money. And then you have that little bit of connectivity broadband for the parks, which is like $2.6 million.
Is there a way of directing some of that money to Lane Grove, Peru area?
Are you talking about the broadband piece of it? The broadband piece would be under the jurisdiction of the board, the new broadband board.
Well,
Christine Huck was,
but, underserved areas should be the priority.
that's the whole focus of the CUDs.
I know, but we keep getting denied down there.
Well, is it, are they denying it or saying not everybody could be first in
There are
line?
not enough houses.
Like, you gotta grow houses.
Well, that's the problem. There's not enough houses. Or not enough customers.
Who's your CUD?
Bennington,
So there are, so part of the ARPA money, no matter which ARPA money it is, can be used for match for the $100 million of IIJA additional broadband money that we expect to get through the formula of IIJA. And then there are
And
other
when is that coming down?
opportunities for grant, right, seeking
Blunt
grants
this up.
for underserved areas in the IIJA.
because this is becoming a problem and it's a Comcast regulation.
Oh, well, CUDs don't necessarily have to work through Comcast. They
Well,
can-
that's where the problem lies. I don't understand it all. Senator Campion's partner does. He's the chair of the CUD down there.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out what we can do to make sure that these people can get some broadband because they keep getting denied. It's a mess.
Well, I don't know. It sounds like the one thing that's really important is there's more coming on broadband.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
so-
but-
There's more coming by formula, and then there's opportunities for other grants to be written that are competitive in the IIJA.
How can we direct it to areas that really need it?
we can. I don't know if we can, Dick, because the whole purpose of the CUDs is to look at all those regional needs and really prioritize. Because everybody who's unserved wants to be the first to be served. So it's sort of like the transportation problem, when everybody would come in and say, put my bridge on the list because I should, or my road. So we ended up getting into a prioritization and process and not earmarking or directing a particular project over another. So I don't think this committee can select, not to be unsympathetic with any one particular area, but I would suspect up in the kingdom, we've got some other areas that are similar.
Yeah, we're still using pigeons up there,
Well, they are.
carrying the notes.
So,
one house to the other.
I don't know,
So assuming that on the Senate side, the whole 95 of broadband is done in the capital funds, the ARPA capital
I know
funds.
what you're doing.
We could appropriate them here in this bill, here. Or I don't know, is the desire to have them continue to be appropriated in the capital bill?
I think making that capital bill streamlined, you said Dan's working with them to do it?
So, the idea is that Dan knows that the desire is to have the 95 broadband out of the capital projects fund in
Because
ARPA.
there's no question of it.
Yeah, it creates, you just reduce complexity a lot by doing that. The question is that's the bucket for it, but what's just the vehicle for it?
Well, the money should all go through here, as far as I'm-
Well, it would.
It would, we have a bill
too.
too, yeah. The question, and we can reference it here, if you don't want to appropriate it here, if you want to leave the appropriation in the
You
capital
can
bill.
take it out of the capital bill, put it in the budget.
There's nothing left in the capital bill.
Well,
Well, if you wanted to put the whole
Well, we should-
130, you could do the libraries here and that bit of state parks connectivity here as well.
Joe's gonna wanna stretch it out because of the expense.
There's nothing left. We would have appropriated all the ARPA capital here.
Here, yeah. And then the capital bill would be the capital bill. No other funding source but the capital money.
Actually, I like putting it all here.
Okay.
It keeps it all together and gives a better sense of where the money, how the money. from
So I will let
states-
Dan know, I don't know, would you like to, Senator Benning, someone sort of
What,
touch
he
base with him on that?
wants his 10 million pool and I'm gonna take all his ARPA capital money. I'm gonna be very popular. I can add that to my list.
well, he's in a different district.
Well, I mean, it's no different. You don't carry money in every pocket you've got. How do you keep track of your money if you don't keep it in one place?
All right, well, I'm gonna just say that our committee and that we really want to keep our ARPA money,
All
all
consolidated in this part of the
consolidated.
bill.
Yes, and I think that's what the governor has used to say, that he would like to have, and that's why we created the G section, so that it could all be in one
These
place.
big broad
Yeah.
areas could be
So
understood.
I'm gonna suggest that, that based on what people are commenting, that the better thing to do is to appropriate the 95 for broadband, the 15 or 16 for our libraries.
And we put that back up in the community section.
And then the connectivity
It's
was,
it's state parks and its connectivity at the end of the broadband section here.
well, then it would be like 96 something or other. That would be out of the capital.
Yeah, so the 95 would go to the public service broadband board and the 1.6-ish million would go to ANR.
So the 15 million for libraries is for broadband.
No,
That's just capital improvements.
but
It was-
those libraries are used in a way that make them eligible for the capital money.
Any improvements have to be on municipal public buildings that are available for the general public to use
Yep.
and to work.
Oh,
And so that's a limiting factor, because you can't just, use it to do some improvements on your town hall, but we're not making workspace available for anybody in town who wants to establish an office there, basically. I'd like to do that. That would save money. Yeah.
Well,
So
but they have their own money.
they have
have-
176 million that went
Right.
directly to
They should be
towns.
doing good things with that.
Well, they should.
I'm not sure they all are.
So, all right, so we're gonna keep all that 113 right here and appropriate it in the big bill. Okay. I'll have to send Senator Benning a note to say the committee discussed that and rather than appropriating it in the capital bill, are gonna include it in the G section.
Let's take it all.
I'll quote you, Senator Hughes.
And I'll get the amendment.
Okay.
Senator Campion and myself.
So now we are down to 501.
501 is state technology modernization investments. Last year, this is where you swapped out a certain amount of money between general fund and ARPA. There are two items. You have the modernization fund that's being proposed to be set up by the House for about $15 or $16 million of items. Two projects are included here under ARPA dollars, the DMV project and the UI modernization project.
Stephanie, I know that we have tried to reduce the number of special funds. And the House historically has wanted to reduce the amount of special funds. We're now creating a special fund and then making appropriations to that special fund.
Yeah, transferring general fund to
So
it.
could you, from a fiscal perspective, help us understand why this is, why we should do this as opposed to our standard appropriate to DMV for their modernization and, Department of Labor for their modernization? What does a special fund, what does it give us?
So
Other than another one to add to our very long list of special funds.
Well, a special fund generally has its special purpose and a special dedicated revenue. That would be probably the main pro of.
And we don't have a dedicated revenue.
You do not yet.
Well, don't
but
you
you would
remember Jim Reardon, who bless his soul, has been dead for a couple of years,
Yeah.
recommended it, but we've never done it.
And so the idea that much like
I'm not
other
asking you
things
to,
is that
I'm not asking you to defend what the House did.
no,
I wanted to know
the
why.
need to keep current and not let our systems age as much. The idea of creating a special fund and a dedicated revenue source for IT projects that need to have, that are capital in nature, but need to have a continued, ongoing source is one of the potential benefits of creating the fund, even if you haven't not created a source of revenue for it. And I know that, much like the administration is proposing the cash fund related to the capital bill.
But we could create a cash fund and put nothing in it.
Yeah, or you could study the cash fund and the potential for a revenue source for IT. Because IT projects have migrated to the capital bill. We don't really do that much anymore because it's constrained in the capital bill. But that would be from a fiscal point of view, one of the benefits of looking at something like that. Do you create a cash fund? Do you find a source for it? Or is it combined cash and IT fund because you have IT needs that continuously come up and do not have dedicated revenue sources?
Yes.
Does the special fund or the cash fund, do either of them give the administration greater flexibility or access to the money than they would have if we?
Potentially, yes, because they can anticipate receipts generally in a special fund. We have written in certain special funds that they can't do that for.
Meaning they can spend out of the special fund even if we haven't appropriated in anticipation of?
Receipts.
Okay.
That does happen occasionally. They're good faith about it. You don't usually, sometimes they're looking for us to bless that in advance.
They can't transfer, there are limits on how much they can.
They can't transfer across appropriations much, but they can, like with the FEMA money, enormous amounts of FEMA money came in from the federal government. The biggest excess receipts are in federal dollars, but you could, in theory, midway through when we're not in session, seek and anticipate. A department usually is seeking an anticipated receipt because something got missed in the budget. We get reports on that, but for example, we don't allow excess receipts on the general fund or the transportation fund or the ed fund, and we don't allow it in the global commitment fund. We have to stay within the box we set and we do it through transfers to even out, but
But we do allow it on special,
we do a lot of,
but we do allow it.
we do allow it.
Yeah.
It's a power and duty under the finance commissioner.
So,
But it's not something that we have seen, like,
Hasn't been abused.
yes.
Let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
so they're appropriating the 50 million into the fund. And I guess some of that, because it's a multi-year with
So
state.
no, we can't take ARPA money and put it into a fund. We are appropriating ARPA dollars for these projects here. It's the $16 million earlier in the bill that went into the fund. But we're spending them in the same way as the fund that I think is what we're setting up here.
Well, it says 50 million is appropriated from American Rescue Plan Fund.
That's ARPA.
I know.
Yeah.
And so they're putting ARPA money,
Into ADS, but they're not putting it into the IT modernization special fund. We can't, just like we can't do the broadband money into the broadband fund because it's,
and so,
Yeah.
so what money is the fund? We're gonna create a fund that has no money.
so the state special fund that we were just talking about, the IT modernization fund that they create back in the E-105
Yeah.
section or so of the bill. That fund is getting a $16 million transfer of general fund to pay for the exact same $16 million-ish of projects. The biggest one is that in the agency of administration, the next vision module. But there's a couple other smaller ones. But that fund is receiving a general fund transfer. And then we're as opposed to appropriating the general fund, we're appropriating the special fund for those projects.
The only thing that I'm thinking is, for example, the whole integrated eligibility, which is really Medicaid eligibility. I was talking to people, they don't even know that we had integrated eligibility since 1982, and that with the healthcare reform, we actually pulled out Medicaid eligibility from food stamps and all the other benefit programs. And so integrated eligibility right now is Medicaid. That comes with a federal match. And we appropriate, obviously, to the department, to the agency that has the authority to draw down the federal match. And the same would be true for food stamps if we did that. Or the same would be possibly true with, I don't know, with some of the child welfare. I don't know whether, 4E and 4B, but, in terms of what we have. So I don't know how, like a special fund, relative to any program that gets match, how that works very well, because traditionally we've made the appropriation to the agency that has that authority to draw down those federal dollars, and ADS isn't one. So I don't know, maybe
So-
create it and then ADS bills you, and then you know.
You can do, there's probably a couple different mechanical ways you could address that if you wanted it to all pass through. It would always be the legislature's choice to have it be through the special fund or to be
You
direct.
see, I'm still struggling what a special fund gets us.
Yeah.
As opposed to a direct
Yeah.
appropriation to the
And so if,
operating entity.
yeah, and
It
if
gets
you
the
wanted to,
administration something, but it doesn't get us anything.
and so if you are thinking that centralizing the funding for projects for IT project modernization under ADS is a good idea. Special fund is potentially one tool for that. You could appropriate the state match into that special fund and they would transfer it out if the billing agency was the drawing agency, or it would just be demonstrated that the match was there. You would seek the match money under your federal grant lines as you go along, but it's a matter of management control. Like, that's in the end, where do you want the management control of the state match money to be? You may not have these projects would not be, they're funded directly with the ARPA in this construct, but they're funded directly to ADS as opposed to Department of Labor, as opposed to CMV directly, as it's come to you from the House.
So this is a significant departure from normal, I don't know, does it give us better management over our IT? I suppose you could say it's sort of like fee for space, because they build back. But normally fee for space,
These are not, there's not a bill back type of, these are
no,
an estimated project cost and an appropriation to match that cost for whatever phase it's in.
I suppose it puts a fence around it. I don't
But
know.
if you're, I mean, you've been doing this a long time. And if it's been working in the way it's been working and working well, why change it to screw your train of thought up, and which drives us to, keep things the same unless you're gonna improve something. Why change it?
I guess I'm really struggling why we would be making this change. And what benefit it is when we can't put ARPA money in.
No, you can't, you wouldn't be able to put the federal match dollars through it.
No. So I'm just struggling to see what it gets us.
It moves the appropriations process further from the legislature and the people. That's what it does. It's what fee for space did.
For the projects that,
All of the things that go on in fee for space with the capital complex, for example, the motor vehicles.
I
All
don't
of
know.
those things are further from the appropriations process. Back when I first came here, before they invented fee for space, and John Bloomer was right, young John, the secretary, said this is gonna hurt in the long run because the departments aren't able to control costs.
They just get the bill.
They just get the bill. And this is all that's gonna do. And I think Senator Starr is absolutely correct. All it's
So
gonna
we should
do-
just do the direct appropriations.
because if you think that the projects that would be funded through the special fund benefit from that consolidation, that's one potential. And the only other potential I see as a fiscal person is it does create a catchment for if you did find a dedicated revenue source that you wanted to place. But that doesn't mean that the projects themselves have to be through appropriated money directly to ADS through the fund. You could create the fund, and you could have the projects be still directly
Normally,
appropriated.
we've created the fund when we have a funding stream to put into the fund.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is creating a fund and then redirecting things that we normally would appropriate one way, and moving it through.
If the, money
I am
for-
willing to, if the House wants to argue that there's a compelling reason and benefit for doing this, absent dedicated funding stream, which there's not ongoing, which there is not, then we can negotiate that in conference. But I think we're less convinced that this is getting us, that there's an identifiable benefit from this.
So what I'm hearing you say is that in this section G501, you would prefer to directly appropriate the ARPA to DOL and DNV.
And that's what we did in budget adjustment, and that's what we've done historically.
Because now New York ends up with 850 million going to a stadium in Buffalo. Seriously.
Yeah.
All right.
That's how it works.
All right, so we're gonna continue our practice of a direct appropriation and to the entity that is, whose, the project is needed for them to do their work. And knowing that ADS puts their staff even into those departments. I mean, they're employees of ADS, but they work in those. So, all right, I think we've spent enough time on that. And if the House can give us a compelling reason, we could
Or if
always.
they can trade us something compelling.
In the sub B part that is part of the DOL UI modernization, they have a staggered release of money.
Why do we need to do that?
I think because people are concerned about the ability of the department to and the timing of how long it would take for this project to be done. So I'm guessing that there's early release in July, and then having the Joint Technology Oversight Committee being, informed of the progress of the, because once you make the full $30 million appropriation, it's at TOL, it's a.
How do I know those are the right amounts? Where did they come from?
I don't have an answer on that.
I mean, I can understand when we've done that
They
before.
may somewhat relate to a project plan. We can
And
find out from.
does this relate, no, this is different from the 500,000 the commissioner said that they removed that.
No, this is just on the modernization project.
All right, so
That was removed from the base, and it's a different, the job link system.
um,
Um,
so that was the base, they took money out of the base.
They did.
Oh. They took money out of the base and created the fund. Okay. All right,
They took money out of the part of the increase in the general fund base for DOL, so that they
How
reduced.
they get 11 votes.
um. Well, we didn't get any communication from the commissioner that was an issue, did we? It was just the 500,000.
I mean, he did,
Michael Harrington.
that was the one that he was most strongly, he did raise the entire amount that they reduced. There was a bit of back and forth with Representative Feltus, the reason and the timing. But the Commissioner Harrington, point in his communications that the $500,000 piece was the most problematic in terms of finishing, the project that is referenced.
Well, I'm just concerned, 3 million and then a year later, 10. And what it is, I can see somebody's monitoring this discussion. I don't know whether, if they might need 5 million in the first year. I'm not sure, I guess this really would require.
And I'll find out from Catherine and Sarah if our IT consultant in the Jefferson office weighed in on this distribution.
That would be helpful. Okay. So are we now down to climate action investments?
That is where we're going next.
If you have a comment, we'll take it offline. We're gonna keep going through this.
So in G600, these are the climate investments. A is the ARPA and B is the general fund. And so you see there's between 1 and 2.
80 million.
80 million of weatherization related between OEO and public service. In 3, there's $2 million. This is ARPA dollars to AOT to support the continued build out of public electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Then there's $25 million to public service.
Okay, now, I don't have my transportation, yes, I do.
So.
I have Chris Roop here, you can.
So this is the portion that is considered ARPA eligible for the build out of the charging stations.
Is that 80
We
million?
had 2 million ARPA, 4.25 of IIJA, and then 20% of the non-federal match from the T fund of 80,000 according to my notes, which I happen to have right here. But just by luck.
And Senator Starr wants to go back to the weatherization pieces.
Yeah, 1 and 2 though, that's 80 million for weatherization.
Weatherization. The lower income through the OEO and the moderate income through the public service, and through efficiency Vermont.
And that's multi-year. That's what we're doing. We gotta remember, we're giving them, because a lot of the programs really want to know what they have to work with, and then they can better schedule their work and determine workforce. And
That's
so,
only for 2, right?
well, it's,
Doesn't this run out?
20, this would be going, the date here is December 31st, 2024.
Yeah, it's 2 years, 23 and 24.
And you have that reporting.
part of 20, yeah.
You have that reporting language earlier where you will be getting updates on how the money's flowing out across all of ARPA.
So, this I think is really a critical piece if we want to reduce,
And this is where we have that other bill in the drawer that had the weatherization pieces that came out of Senate Natural Resources. That mirrors these appropriations.
And what did you guys in trans took testimony in regards to charging stations? And does this match what you found out in there?
yeah, the 2 million that was referenced, on number 3, yeah, that matches. That's what I was citing from the transportation, bill, how it was split up between, ARPA and
This is,
IIJA.
this is not the fishing net. set.
No, this is not fishing.
This is the portion of, this is the
This is
the
part of
stations the charging stations that can fit under ARPA funding.
in,
Like on the interstate or?
yeah, let me read it to you, Bobby. It's State Highway Network, and agency is authorized 6.25 million in fiscal year to install level 3. Those are the fast charge stations along the state highway network, consistent with the goals established, in this
So it's
act.
not even, it doesn't specify the interstate highway system, it's just,
No, there is additional language that would require that, a fast charge has to be available, I think within a mile, is it Chris,
That's
of
correct.
an exit. So it's really trying to make sure that we've got, for the traveling public, level 3 fast charges, that are conveniently located along our transportation arteries.
Are those on private land or public land?
It could be either one,
Either one?
yeah.
Is there a financial benefit to somebody hosting them? Like a gas station that's off the interstate?
The only advantage, well, it could be because while the customer is sitting there getting charged, they're going in and maybe having a bite to eat or something like that.
Okay.
And the charging stations, we had a conversation about that in terms of what does the money get us, and it really is because the utilization, because we don't have a lot of EVs yet. This is to help with the upfront cost of installation, and it's really an incentive because ChargePoint or whatever company is actually got the equipment and negotiating with the electric company is not going to be making money to start out with because there's just not enough.
you had that DC power for the
You have to have,
fast charge.
you have to have phase 3.
Yeah,
And that also means that the siting has to, that's why just a lot of our park and rides, you can't do fast charging because we don't have the phase.
see, I was thinking of like the out-of-staters that
Well, that's
come
why,
north.
for example, and that's what this would do. So right now, there's a fast charge at Hannaford's in Bradford. There's a fast charge in Danville. There's not a fast charge, I don't believe, in St. Johnsbury yet.
No, they're getting ready to, for your car in Danville, your,
Green Mountain Power installed it at Marty's. He's got phase 3. So he's had a level 3.
new electric.
Huh?
Getting a new Tesla probably, so you,
Me?
yeah, so you need a charge.
Well, I'm still
just
driving
kidding.
I'm still driving my 12-year-old Honda Civic, so I may be in the market for a new car.
Yeah.
We don't have enough miles on it.
That's 160.
Oh, that's-
Well, you can go to 250.
Mine went to 292,
Oh, good.
292?
no problems at all, except Russ, that's the only reason I'm here.
Yeah, my son's the one with the EV. And a 4-wheel drive pickup truck, and I've got a 12-year-old
You got a
Honda.
Ford, one of those F-100 Ford?
No, he doesn't have an electric one yet.
Oh, okay, those are.
So anyway, that is what the 2 million here is
Yeah.
part of that, creating that highway network.
Yeah.
Which, if you, for the traveling public, you have to know where every one of those fast charge stations are.
They know it on the phones.
They do it on, yes, they know it on the phone. The only problem is if it's down and not working and then there's
Yeah.
only one and the next one is,
Well, I mean, that's the problem we've always had on our highway. You know, once you get up above, you know, a certain, up above White River Junction, really, if you're out of gas, it's.
but we got more gas stations right now. than
Yeah,
that one,
but I
you're
mean,
right.
I've had a couple of real close. calls.
Yeah, the only problem is somebody could get you 5 gallons of gas and get you going. But if your battery,
Snake the cord into their house.
you have to basically get your car towed to
Oh,
the next
yeah.
charging station. So let's keep going. So that's 2 million and that's reflected in the 6.2 that's in the T-bill.
Subsection 4 is like 25 million. These are electrification initiatives, so upgrading home electrical systems for 80% of the money and upgrading heat pump, water heaters, heat pump water heaters for low and moderate income homeowners.
Okay.
You can see here clearly these green marks. The House has drafted it as it was putting money into the Clean Energy Development Fund, but that cannot do that.
Not, you can't appropriate directly.
Well, actually, these are general fund dollars, so you could do that. The recommendation, I'm sorry,
These are
these are the general fund dollars, I believe.
are they?
Uh,
It's getting confusing because.
yeah, no, these are still in ARPA, sorry, my brain is jumping around. These are still the ARPA dollars.
Because the 2 million was our.
And then you see load management down in sub 5 for $2 million.
And you did, anybody explain the difference between income sensitive people and low to moderate, or low and moderate income vermonters? What's the difference? That's a stupid
Which one?
income sensitive customers. Who are income sensitive?
It'd be like, you know,
Well,
Or
income
very-
sensitivity is all to,
So it looks like it's an eligibility piece for whether or not you'd be eligible.
what does that go,
But
the
down
income
below is-
sensitivity
So
on
I
the
think
property tax?
No.
the income sensitive is, do you make incentives because people won't, you have to incent them, they're sent, I don't know if it's price sensitive. as
Yeah, but
opposed to
income sensitive customers, who are they? I know what a low and moderate income Vermonter is, we've got definitions. I've never heard of an income sensitive.
And I'll find out if it's meant to be income sensitive or price sensitive.
Oh, you're down in
It's
5.
yeah.
Well, I thought you just said 5.
Oh,
I did, I
no.
was moving on to 5.
Oh, sorry, I'm back in 4.
Well-
again. Where?
Well,
Okay.
Stephanie went to 5.
All right, so now we're at 5. Let's move to 5 then. And this is still ARPA
These
for
are-
load management and storage.
And it's the phrase income sensitive, but when you customers access incentives, and to me, incentives is a price sensitivity more than a,
I
What the
agree.
income
I don't know what
level.
that means. Normally, when we're talking about money, and I think with the ARPA, we actually have to, is it 80% of median income in ARPA?
it's 80, or I think there's,
Area median?
yeah, I'll check with Sarah, I think that they, are certain things, like the VHFA, missing middle, we think we are proving that we can be up in that 100 to 110, 120% of median income is the question.
I argue every senior citizen is income sensitive. Where they got
No,
a
that's
billion.
not true.
Well,
I don't consider myself income sensitive.
Well, I don't know what it means, so I guess we are.
Well, we're sensitive to our income.
Sensitive to my income.
We don't know what it means, so I think to assist,
you must
it really
know
doesn't
better.
tell us who the customer is. And normally we've talked about income eligible, I
Low
think,
and moderate income.
Yeah.
I give a shit.
which is what we're doing in the above
Yeah,
section.
Right.
it's
So
clear
why
that-
are we changing it to
But
one?
is this an eligibility or is this simply additional
A
incentive?
polite way of saying you're broke.
All right, Senator Sears raises a good point. We don't know who the customer is, and until we have a definition of income sensitive, it's a new
Politically correct.
It's a new descriptor that we're.
You're right, Alice, it's probably politically correct.
Yeah, it's a new group that we're forming.
Others don't want to be insulted.
Okay,
We're otherwise known as broke.
That's poor.
did this probably come from energy and technology?
They were
I
talking
think
about
actually this was,
that.
I think this was actually a administration recommend. I don't know if the language is exactly the way it came over from the administration, I'll check.
Well, probably somebody will whip in and tell us, just like we had the director and the secretary of digital services. Come in.
You remember what he
Lately, we
said?
quickly move to the next section.
You know this.
It's
We'll
hard not
probably
to.
be out all over I can see John Walter's blog now.
Yeah.
Sears doesn't know what income sensitive means.
The other day when we had that presentation, room 11, and the guy was telling about heat
Richard
pumps.
Howard.
Yeah, didn't he talk a little bit about this type of individuals? Somebody that has the money to do it, but yet they don't wanna do it, so you incentivize them so that they'll take and put their money with money you give to them to switch over.
I like free best.
Pardon?
I like free.
Free?
Yeah.
There's no free one.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got free light bulbs the other day from,
How'd you do
Efficiency
that?
Vermont. They sent me a thing on the internet, and I checked off the box and said I'd take the free stuff, and they sent it.
So the 2 million, let me ask,
Where are you now?
and 5 is for load management
Then what
and
would that
storage
mean?
efforts.
Basically batteries.
Batteries.
Oh, batteries?
Okay,
That's what the
So-
storage is,
Oh, yeah.
what we're talking about here.
so,
And that helps with the load management if you have enough
Yeah.
yeah,
distributed batteries.
it does. But, but the 2 million, you've got two things. You have 2 million for load management, and that's what we're paying for. Are we paying out of the 2 million staff people to go out and work with customers to take up the incentives? In other words, can the 2 million be used for assisting income sensitive customers, whoever they might be?
Is this 2 million for staff to try and connect interested customers to incentives that are out there?
Yeah, or is it for load management and storage
Or
efforts?
are you actually making or creating the incentives with each dollar?
Yeah.
It's for.
I don't know the answer.
It's for small
Well, it
municipals.
isn't to pay somebody to promote this, it should be for the equipment.
Well,
So it looks like some of the money can also go to the
Small
smaller
utilities.
and cooperative utilities.
yeah,
Well, that'd be good.
Is that for the?
I'm not
smart
sure,
meters?
I'm not sure what that phrase to assist, to access really means, and whether they're talking about some of that 2 million, it's gonna go out.
Chrissy, can you look, the A&R provided a document on the climate investments in addition to the budget document.
When they brought you in here?
When they didn't get to it when they first came in, and they came back.
Okay, I'm gonna do a little digging for
And I'd like to see if there's any more descriptive in those documents they provided.
So Stephanie, we have a
I think
question
we
on
ran out
this.
of time.
And can it be used for smart meters or one of that other money?
That's a different, you'll see that in another
I
section.
know, well, sounds like this could be used for it too.
Well, this is load management and storage, which are, I think is a different.
Capture and share benefits of load
That
management.
somebody that
Okay,
has a water pump, an electric deep well water pump, this would be good for them. Can you get water pumps or just,
So water, to replace, to use a heat pump for your water heater, are you talking about geothermal heat?
I'm talking about drinking?
Oh, the pump you need to get your water out of your well? I don't know, that's a appliance.
I don't think so. No, I don't see how that it does anything to improve climate.
It was,
You can get these worthless heat pumps, but they're gonna freeze to death anyhow. If it's below 20 degrees.
You need to have
But you
regular
can't get the water that you really need to stay alive.
No, that's true. No.
I don't know if there's like energy efficient
Pardon?
Mark thinks the opposite.
Right, are you and Mark
Thinks they'll cure the rainy
McDonald
day.
conversing about heat pumps?
No, but you ask anyone with an older house that has a heat pump
It's
or
not enough.
several.
Not enough.
heat
They'll
It's
tell
not
you
enough.
it's not enough.
It's
They
not,
tell you.
it's not enough to heat an old house.
Well, Brian
Or-
says it's
At
great.
a certain temperature,
At his
it's not enough.
expansion.
It's great for heating hot water.
He's
though.
got
I'm
two.
sure it's great for
He's
hot
probably
water.
got a brand
You know
spanking new
If
mansion.
you like the turn on.
He's got two.
Oh, really?
No, sure.
All right, I'm gonna keep going.
And then you want to see it all.
If we could move on to the 15 million.
So our number 6 at the top of the next
Yeah.
page.
Landscape resilience and mitigate flood hazards as follows.
Buy your
For
house.
buyout, we know that.
And you'll see more on the general fund
Yeah,
side.
that's a good idea, but a lot of people just don't want to sell.
Well, we've had
But
this program
some,
for years.
but some would sell and the FEMA doesn't cover it, so this is a way of,
They don't
no,
anymore.
there are many flood prone areas that don't qualify for FEMA
Yeah.
buyout. So this is to fill the gap where properties could be bought and they are, and I think Irene certainly identified some, but they don't qualify under the FEMA rules. And the next is technical assistance to the statewide hazard mitigation. And
And you will see in the general fund, I think, there are $8 million for the pieces that wouldn't be our, but same buyout structure. Not-
For the buyout for the protection system.
for the vulnerable parcels, there's more money.
There's more money because I think this has to cover, certain population and maybe this or the others more
All right,
commercial.
so here's number 7, here's ag.
Yeah, but what about B? What's a hazard mitigation program? For what kind of hazard?
Flood
Yeah,
hazards.
it's
It's
all, that whole thing.
all of it
mitigate
is
flood
under,
hazard.
it's
It's all flood
all under
hazards.
flood hazards.
You see that up in the bleed in number 6.
And then it could be a variety, it could be for towns, for example, to provide that kind of TA.
We call it rip rap.
Well, some of that. Number 7,
Oh,
here's
this is
ag.
soil, yeah.
I think you'd like that, Senator Starr.
Yeah, that would, I mean, we're headed in that direction and ecosystem services and building better and.
So this, it
stronger
seems like
soil.
would be more of the,
And then this number, this was also a recommendation in the administration's proposal at $5 million. The House nipped a little bit out of it to do those other 2 pieces that you saw in ag, in the G300 section. The fairs
Oh,
and the plan, the food plan.
but the food plan, we might use something else. Okay, here's the appropriation to the food bank, and it's $1.5 million on top of the 7 for the BAA, and the request is 6.
29 million in the house bill.
We'll keep going on that. $1 million to improve air quality. Well, this is true. They do know that trees do reduce heat in urban areas. So that's to plant trees.
Those are heat items.
$200.
That's pretty expensive tree.
Actually, I was thinking that's kind of cheap.
Yeah,
Oh,
actually,
they're
it's
just
planted,
little
yeah.
stumps.
Oh, but do you remember when they used to have the tree farm up in Essex?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where Woodside is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
You got bulldoze, I'm sorry.
I was at the one bulldozed it. But yeah, when they had the tree farm, they grew trees. You could,
Yeah.
they'd give them away.
You know,
Remember, when I worked at Lakeside, North Avenue, Burlington, we used to have a work crew that went up to that facility.
Plus you got
Weed and around the trees and all that stuff.
yeah, and then of course they had a lot of, it was USDA had a lot of tree planting.
You could buy them like 29 cents. a
So
We
committee,
should have Forest and Parks look into that.
what?
Is it a $5 tree or $2?
I don't know if they
bill
plant
tree?
any more of those stupid Chinese lilacs.
Oh, yeah? It's not a money tree? I thought it would be a
Oh.
$5 bill.
They're the only ones that seem to live. All the nice ones like the, I don't know, the elms, the special elms, or the,
Ash,
well, ash, no, you don't wanna plant ash.
so that's what I mean, those are the ones that are all going by the way.
No, I'm talking about the ones that got planted along Route 2, the ones that they put in that were really the nice ones, like the oaks, et cetera, they all died. The Japanese or Chinese lilacs, they all survived. The one thing that I don't know is, it's not planting them, it's the maintenance. And they have to be cared for or they die. And so to me, we've got to make sure that there's a plan for the maintenance, and whether it's municipalities agree, but I'm telling you,
Especially if it's in a heat island.
they have to be, once they're planted, they have to be cared for, and they have to be fertilized, and they have to be
Water.
just watered. So
It says urban areas,
So-
don't most cities and villages take care of this?
no,
But it could be also
No,
those mini
no.
forest ideas where you get the right combination of trees and the right density and you create a self-sustaining little mini forest.
I want to put something in
Yeah.
it's not only, but something about that there's a plan.
This is the sustainability of them.
Because I've seen
Yeah.
so many things that we put in, like a lot of the traffic islands. And when they did the improvement up around Marshfield Dam, they required them to do all these plantings. They're all up to weeds because they're not
They
maintained.
won't take care of it.
And people were saying it's a stupid requirement because you won't maintain them, and it's absolutely right. We spend a lot of money for plantings that are, so.
See, you could get
So
a
can we
tree
put something in that the plantings and,
and
That's
if
one-
Sustainability.
Sustainability.
yeah.
Maintenance.
if you get the stuff growing good and
To
say
plant up to
5
5,000 trees with what, a plan of
Maintenance.
maintenance, to improve air quality. Okay.
years, that's a
All right,
joke.
So this is,
Show me, where's the heat island?
He's
Can you show me?
out of the
It's-
5,000.
What if you guys, it's usually,
it's usually a very dense urban area
yeah, we have a
where you've
lot of.
got a high
parks.
concentration of
Current use.
pavement and such, that's
We
all.
already do.
And
The average temperatures are much higher than the surrounding
and they
areas.
know that, it's
Or,
that,
or you don't pay.
That's one, Burlington, no place
Oh,
else.
lots of urban areas have.
No, I did some.
Bennington.
yeah, a lot of downtowns
Yeah,
have that.
Bennington downtown is pretty well,
Pavement.
pavement, there's some trees, they tried planting trees.
So let's keep
Never had
going.
either.
I have a feeling, I don't even know what time it is, but it's gonna be,
It is 3:41.
well,
It's 3:41.
so I'm gonna keep going.
Okay,
Go ahead.
So now we're in section B of the climate. The documents from DNR did not give much more detail on the $2 million about how much.
But the
would be
2
grants.
million,
Yeah, for load and storage, whether or not it's all grants or some of it was gonna be administrative.
in B, 40 million appropriated as follows. And that's the 10 million to ACCD that we recognize that some of it should be used at community attractions, which could include certain fishing areas. We've already taken the 3 million for the wilderness. This is number 2. This is the one that's going. That's according to the recommendations of your transportation committee, that there could be used to benefit more people. And
Transportation is taking this out.
well, what transportation's proposing is that 2 million of this go to VORAC, which helps support the development of our trails systems throughout the state and recreation. And thinking that in terms of timing and priorities, that and then 1 million of this would go to help support public transit and the micro transit efforts, which are also part of climate reduction. So,
One per,
Fine by me.
so it's out, Bobby. If we agree with transportation, we would use that 3 million, other than charging stations in the wilderness. That some of us have said.
Yeah, I mean, there'd be electricity at some of those places.
So now we have 12 million, which is in the we're crosswalking, the transportation, the T-bill with what's here, and there's 12 million in the T-bill, but it's referenced here as well. And that's the incentive payments for new plug-in electrics.
So is the transportation committee gone through all these?
Yes. Uh-huh,
And they're recommending it just as it is here?
yes.
So you got
No,
a
no,
million
no,
for
no.
e-bikes?
Because I was getting
No.
down to the e-bikes.
No,
and stuff.
no, we are not agreeing with that. No, we are
One
using,
thing that I could-
we are using those A and B, not for e-bikes and not for fun.
Can we get the scooters that Tim wanted?
No,
No scooters either?
no. So, the 2 million would still go to transportation, but it would be used in a different way. We are talking about, let me see if I can find it.
Fair, be fair.
Yes, it is. It would be as follows. Public transit to continue the fare free, but with some flexibility that some routes would start charging. Like, for example, you can take the link for no money at all.
Yep.
But at some point, fares have got to kick that certain flexibility. And then the other area that would be increased, and that is the mobile, that's the mini transit, which is a much more on-demand, and instead of having empty buses going around routes and so forth, it's much more
Mini bus,
customer, yeah,
Small.
and so that is how we would recommend 2 million of that to go to support this. And the other request, which the committee is recommending, is, and was in the governor's budget for $1 million, and then 50,000 was to support VAST and its trails and with the groomer, and a 50,000 for law enforcement, which is all part of travel, tourism, and trail maintenance. So
Which one is that?
That would be added.
it's gonna be
That would be
added.
added.
You would replace 7 with these 3
Yeah.
recommendations from the
Did
transportation.
you say 50,000 or 500,000 each for the last two?
No, let's see, for VAST, it would be 750,000 to help them with trail maintenance and the groomers.
Yeah.
And then 50,000 for law enforcement
Yeah.
on trails.
So
800 in total.
Yeah.
750 and then 50, for a
Yeah.
total of 800. And then we would, as I said before, between item number 2, which is the 3 million, and number 7, which is 2, is 5 million. And we would redirect the 5 million to support public transit, the mini transit initiative, VAST, and 2 million to BORAC to do more grants for our trail network. That's the recommendation.
Makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
So
So,
just to be clear, numbers 3,
Electric's
4,
no motion.
5, 6, the transportation committee is recommending to do the
Yes.
same.
keeps the
We gotta
same.
put some money in here somewhere
Just
to deal with you.
Replace my writing, remind me again what that is.
Yeah, it's when you're trading in a car and you get an incentive, like an
Okay, yeah.
e-bike or
Yep.
whatever, so that you're taking a car off the road, and you have to document
Yeah,
that you're not
So
going.
you're swapping cars here, and in Mileage Smart, you're helping people purchase.
Yes, yeah, that's the
Okay.
difference
Yep.
Materials.
Got it, thank you.
Okay,
What do
So-
we, did you guys in James talk about any money to take care of damaged or unused or undercharged batteries? These used batteries from all these used.
no, you're talking about EV battery disposal? No,
Somebody's gotta deal with that.
they probably do,
I
but
mean, you get a lot of those cars and they're gonna get crashed and the battery's gonna get
I got
broken.
an email on that the other day.
maybe we should do like we do with electronics, and we make the manufacturer responsible for the disposal.
Well, there should be something somewhere because.
But no, we haven't talked about that yet. not within the context of this. But that, there are other way, that we do that with electronics
Yeah.
and other packaging. I can't remember
And
exactly.
light bulbs.
Yeah.
light bulbs.
Yeah,
Hey.
fluorescent
Yeah.
bulb.
So then we've got the 5 million for public safety, and we've been hearing from all the municipalities and they want, well, some would say, please keep it at 5, but most are saying, please make it 11.
Right. So it's long-term stuff. They got it to keep the rates down long-term.
The question is, there's no money.
No rates.
So that is the
More money.
advanced metering, it's sort
Yeah.
of smart meter,
And I,
meter 2.0 type
Yeah,
of.
so, yes,
so, for the, particularly the
Very nice
municipal,
city climate.
which, this is all going to the cooperative in the municipal. So, it is the 5 million, what's the total estimate of
We're still
what
at
they need?
G600.
11,
Very end.
11. They're
So-
asking for 11.
And that's it at the 50% level, or was the 11 to a straight grant that they?
I think we'll have to look at I sent that communication out.
We
to
have all the
everybody.
documents.
Yeah.
And I'd have to look at the documents in terms of what that means. Now, the other thing that we're getting, we haven't gotten to broadband, or we did go to broadband, but we have a request from Christine Hallquist for 5 positions.
Yeah, and we're getting to the admin positions.
So we're gonna have to remember about that.
On that number 8 that we just went through, the advanced meters,
We haven't finished on it.
oh, you haven't done it yet?
We're still talking about the fact that they would like 11 million. And the question was, I think they wanted 11 million in total.
And there was, I thought the metering piece was like 8.3 at one point, but
Yeah.
The
But I-
metering piece of the 11?
yeah, they had a variety of requests.
Well,
And they're-
I get the variety of requests. Most of the municipals don't have a smart grid.
No.
And if you're going to do anything about controlling usage and getting people to plug their cars in the middle of the night and not at the busiest time of the day, smart meters make sense for the municipals.
But I think when we did this with like
No,
the
let me
co-op,
see. Wait a minute, though.
we paid the bill.
This is
Yes.
from Ken
Now
Nolan.
we're only gonna pay
And,
50%.
The advanced metering is critical because they want to see infrastructure investment for modernizations. So they're asking for 6 million, which would be matched by 6 million from the utilities, making it a $12 million project. However, that was back in February 17th. But subsequently to that, I think we've been saying they need
Who's
11.
gonna match it, Jane?
What the municipalities would match it.
Yeah, but that isn't very fair, because I'd swear, when we did like the co-op, Vermont Electric, and we did smart meters, we pumped out a lot of millions of dollars to cover that cost out of here. And I think, you know,
The municipals didn't get
here
it,
we're only paying 50%.
so we should be paying more.
We should be paying
Well,
more.
that was the question, does the 11 million cover the full cost? And, or is this language at 5 million and 50%, is that, is that where they get the 50%?
Well, 50 here, and then they're gonna be utility, municipal electric goes.
It's
Yeah,
that
but
they
the
were-
original ask was 11. So did the 11 cover the whole cost, or?
Yeah, I think the total cost was 11. This is half, so that we would be helping them with 50% of that cost, but I think
Just
we
a
should
minute,
be
just a
doing better
minute,
than that.
just a
The rate
minute.
matters.
Got it.
I've got the paper.
Just go up.
All right, so this is the whole thing. And I sent it out to everybody.
I know, if you want a straight answer where you could get it. Morley could tell you all about it.
That's true.
But some of this, well, this is their proposal for a cleaner, greener Vermont, which is everything from ash borer removal to residential upgrades to energy storage. So the latest advanced metering, AMI, is 10.2 million. Flexible load was 1.1. Now, the 10 million includes a 50% cost share for advanced metering. And then energy storage was another 10 million. Distribution automation was 68 million on their list. So their total request was 2 billion.
2 billion?
Too big one.
So 2,206,243.
I move that. You need a motion on that?
Well, a big chunk of it was 593 million for strategic relocation, upgrade, distribution of infrastructure. So,
Pretty strategic
huh?
for that.
So this is the one that I last got, which was the AMI component of the request, was to be able to seek the IIJA funding for other modernizations. And they're asking for 6 million in state assistance to be matched by 6 million from them for a total of a 12 million project cost. And it's critical to move the project forward. So then we've gotten subsequent emails saying they need 11 million.
Well, that would be the full bill. if
Well,
we
that's
paid
really
it
the
all.
question, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from somebody because they're listening.
Yeah, I have a meeting with,
Well,
my municipal and,
I just think that
I already have.
if we
county
paid,
association.
Well, they just sent the email out again, and it says 11.
if we paid for the co-ops when they came through Washington and BTC, DEC, if we paid for their meters, we should be paying for these meters. If we only paid half,
I think VEC's was, a grant, and it wasn't state.
Central Vermont Public Service, Big Mountain Power got money. I think they got.
But where they got it from is federal.
I think it was.
So now they're asking for a match
Right.
for federal.
those smart meters are the way to go.
Well, they are, and they're really necessary because they're for a whole load management in the
Yeah,
whole thing.
and the more we move into
Really to tell you that.
electric cars, it will become more important.
Oh, yeah, right from the plant. They'll shut yours down if you miss a tree.
So we have 5 there. At least in February, they were looking for 6. And
Well,
more
now it's
recently,
April, probably up to 7 or 8. But I know. I don't know how much money there is that we can help them with, how much more. But I know those little municipals, they work hard to keep their
yeah,
rates in check and.
I don't know if I'm not finding it here. The Storage Justice needs $1 million, the Defender General needs money, Department of Labor, their base budget got taken out, as we are already talked about. Juvenile Justice at $1 million. Free clinics, they want 102. RPCs would like $1,065,000 in their base. Snelling Early Childhood Leadership Institute would like 150. The federal request, if the number is, I don't know, we'll have to figure it out. If we can give them more. What I was talking, somebody was saying, please don't reduce it, so, but let's keep going. 'Cause we haven't.
So you've gotten through the climate, now you're in G700, which is the water and sewer investments.
Yeah, and this was a lot more than the governor's
This is a
recommend.
lot more than the governor's.
What was the governor's recommend?
I believe it was $72 million instead of 107.
Oh,
It's only 90 million, huh?
Well,
So
that's,
that's where they placed it, they did not do the $100 million pieces of economic development, that's where they spent a good chunk of it. They also had an increase in the climate pieces, by about just under $10 million.
okay, but this is huge, 72 to 107.
Well,
So you did 72 or 77.
where did they get all that?
Well, there, it's ARPA, so what we're gonna have to do is, when we conference, we're gonna have to come back with,
You did have less money overall at ARPA to spend here because of the budget adjustment that the
And-
governor had.
and so when we gave the target around economic development and workforce, we were, assuming that we would go with the governor's recommend here.
Not quite all the way down, but a good step down.
But is the ARPA money, once this budget gets done, is it all done or is there?
You will have
another
all,
year?
you will, I believe you will have allocated all of
We
the
would have
entire grant that
appropriated.
came to Vermont. Overlap between what you appropriated last year, what you appropriated budget adjustment, what you're appropriating in this bill. You will be using the entire capacity of the grant that's allocated for Vermont.
So next year, there's gonna be a lot of teardrops following around.
Well,
here.
these are all project, driven, so it's not base.
I know, but they're gonna be thinking, well.
Well, I know, we run into that problem all the time in transportation, because then the municipalities come back and say, well, that's what you gave us last year.
Yeah,
Um,
project's not done, and if we don't put more money into it, it'll all go to waste.
so
That's why it's important to understand how the money's flowing out and the status of projects. Because these dollars will be spent through several years.
31 million for,
3-acre stormwater.
3 acres, and that seems like an awful lot for the 3 acre permitting design and construction support.
Are they gonna do that for individual,
I don't know.
businesses?
I don't know, was that,
I believe that, I think 1 and 2, 1 and the subcomponents were part of the governor's recommend. I think most of the increase was in the,
Would these be for, is this category for businesses?
no, a lot of, well, it looks like a lot would be to municipalities, 15 million.
3 acres
15
stormwater permitted.
It looks like most of it's municipalities here.
Yeah.
Um,
and I think that's where the major increase was. And I can get the sheet and tell you the details on the water piece.
all right, I think we need to, this is just way too much for us to go through to see where we're gonna end up. This is a huge amount. And then let's go to 701.
701, these are actually relate back to what you did last year. You had set aside $15 million of ARPA money that could be swapped out in the capital bill. And these are the items that are being swapped out. And so we already counted on this capacity. And this is simply the specific items that are being appropriated ARPA dollars. So you wouldn't, there's not really play here. You wouldn't change these. These are, we directed them to find $15 million. They only came up with about 5.7. 5.2 in 23 and 500 this current year, so 5.7 total. And so the remainder of that 15 million became part of your capacity to spend. So this is the response of saying, go find things to relieve capital pressure, and these are the items that they think are eligible. And so we're making the specific appropriations here.
So what we're doing,
That Peter's leaving over there.
And these are all items that had an allocation in the capital bill last year.
Then you're starting all over.
Okay, so, we're taking capital funded projects and using ARPA.
Yeah, we're relieving pressure on the capital bill with this 5.7 across 2 years of using ARPA for these projects instead.
And was this proposed, is this something the House?
So this is something you agreed to go look for $15 million of pressure off the capital bill.
Uh-huh.
And this is the circling back and saying, we didn't find $15 million of projects.
And
We
who
don't-
did this?
You passed it in law in
No,
17.
no, but the administration went.
The administration went and found, and they reported back in December, these are the items that can be swapped out.
Okay.
And we can't find 15, we can find 5.7.
All right, so this is their search for swapping, and this is as much as they.
Yeah, and these are the specific now to be swapped items.
Okay, so now we're 800, and this is the limited service positions. And this is where we would add the requested ones from the broadband.
Yes.
We, did I send that request to everybody? It's from Christine Hallquist, and it's to the administration, and that the broadband or the community broadband board is seeking 5 positions to be approved. These positions may all be needed to demonstrate to the National Telecommunications and Information Administration that Vermont has the capacity to accept $100+ million of grant funds as part of the Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment Program within the IIJA. And the NITA will be reviewing each proposal. This is what Stephanie was talking about earlier, the 95 million.
Yes.
There is the potential of more grant money being made available to Vermont. And so the NITA will judge if a state has assembled a team capable of administering the proposed grants. So while they may not all be needed, it's important to get pre-approved so they can be put in place quickly. The risk of not having these positions is over 100 million to the state of Vermont. So
And since the match for that 100 million would come out of this
95. So committee, would we want to give them the resources so that if this additional 100 million for broadband, they have the staffing to administer it, and it would be paid for out of that 95 million of ARPA that we have in the capital bill right now, but we're gonna bring into our bill as well.
And the one thing I want to find out in this section is you do see under public service 5 new positions being created. I just want to find out if any of those were related to those 95 million of broadband that the governor originally proposed versus the other electrification.
But wouldn't
pieces.
Christine know that?
She might, I think that she is, maybe, but there might, she's
Well, we need
independent
to
in a
confirm.
sense, so,
All right,
yeah.
we need to confirm. We
Is
just.
Christine in charge of that statewide?
Christine is in charge of that statewide community broadband board that we created.
She'll
And,
keep track.
yeah, so,
But that board lives in the department essentially, and so the,
into the public service. So we just need to confirm that there's no
Yeah.
duplication here.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think we would want to make sure we're positioned to accept and be competitive for this $100 million grant. Because 100 million of broadband on top of the 95, on top of the 150, was it, we had
last year.
last year, that's a lot of
That's a lot of wire.
195, 150 and 95, it's
I hope it's being spent
245 and
wisely.
another 1,340, we're getting right up
She'll
there.
keep track.
Okay,
Who's
so,
the controller?
I know, gosh.
Do they have a controller,
Hmm.
Christine, and that?
They'd have the administrative support from the public service department.
So Joan is,
June is the commissioner of that department, but the administrative services and support and business support, I would think would be under.
somebody's gotta be watching that money there.
Well, it goes
It's
out to
a
the
whole
C.
process around
Yeah.
this application and granting of it.
All right, so, and it seems like,
So I got money.
and then we've got a lot of positions there to support the ARPA.
Get out there and move
Does
around.
anybody know the historic resource specialist? What that is?
No, we haven't moved the budget yet. No, or anything.
Where's that one?
That's on the
ACCD.
second to last page.
Okay.
I mean, I could think of things that it might be, but
Yeah.
So that may be one, I mean, the significant $100 million that was initially proposed by the administration for particularly the grant list and the capital grants, if those aren't happening, some of those positions may want to be rethought in the administration section here.
because I know we're gonna ultimately, I think, wind up winnowing down the number of positions.
In some cases, we might,
Well, I mean, I'm including all the asks that we have outstanding, that we pulled out of bills too. So I'm just wondering, that's the one on here that I can't immediately.
well, I think Stephanie's pointing out that some of these positions, whether they're needed or not, will be impacted on what we fund in that 159.
And I'll check with Maria whether or not the decisions that the House made in terms of their ARPA, did they actually cross-reference the positions? Because this is the one section where it seems significantly. You know,
And they didn't fund that at all, and
They
they're,
didn't fund any of those
So it seems
significant
strange that they would-
ACCD
they would put
pieces. Yeah.
it seems they would agree to the positions
So
independent of.
yeah, the positions go with the 10.5 million of admin money, but that admin money is now changed in terms of how it would distribute because you're spending the money differently. We'll do a cross-reference
But the
there.
House would have approved the positions without the projects that are in a different bill.
Yeah, we'll find it. Yeah.
I don't think they crosswalk them.
Yeah.
They must have just.
Although they may, the money for the municipal sustainability piece, I don't know if that's through ACCD or through A&R. It's in the 514 bill, 35 million that the Chris Bray's committee is working on. That, it's just deployed differently. It's the same total in the end that everyone's working with, but.
Well, I suppose some of those those municipal buildings with,
Yeah.
many of them are historic structures. And that's in a different bill.
Yeah.
Other, did we make some progress, I guess?
Well, it's good to walk through it because then we know where the questions are.
And said it'd take 20 minutes to walk lunch.
Okay.
Take 20 minutes to find out the answer. He called.
Well, no, I asked her to email me.
Well,
And then I said
I think Alice Alice got copied by Lewis Porter, email. You got a letter from Lewis, an email. I believe so. I
I
believe it
know there's a
was,
call on my desk for Leopold. They called him.
I'm seeing Liz tonight anyways.
well, that was,
Yeah,
oh, you're having a,
Oh, here, I see this is Ken. Oh, I missed it.
huh?
On the next to last page, that's
Lewis Porter. Where did I see this?
Yeah, it's from Lewis Porter, and I think he sent it to you with a copy to me.
He did.
And what did he ask me for?
did.
What's this thing?
We can't change.
Oh, I know he is.
A lot of ones you said in motion last year,
He's
they're
talking
related to the
about
capital bill.
the event here.
We'll come back to the water.
Advanced
ones
meter,
specifically.
AMI.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
One-time appropriation for the original ask was for 11. She stood on the PBSA member municipal utilities, Washington Electric Co-op, and Vermont Electric Co-op. This would represent a 50% match to money from the utilities to install, upgrade, and advance electric metering infrastructure. The money would also allow communities that do not have AMI to get such systems installed and to facilitate technology upgrades for some systems that are outdated. This is important because having these AMI systems will help the public power utilities in their development of time of use rates and managing their electric loads. As we all work to move away from use of fossil fuels, these
So
are.
he's justifying it. The question really is, are they asking for 11? Because originally in February, it seemed like they were asking for 6.
Yeah.
And so we need to, and that's on behalf, he's writing on behalf of Washington Electric.
Yeah.
We need to get, is it Julia? Is that her
Yeah,
name?
Julia.
It's on behalf of the association, so we
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
understand.
I have her phone number.
Lewis is with,
Washington Electric,
yeah,
So
that's who, we're not
Alice.
talking about them. We've already done there. It's a municipal set.
they're a cooperative.
Yeah, but they're already smart meter done.
Who?
No, I don't think that,
Washington and BC and those guys.
I'm not
It's
sure
the
they are.
municipals that need it.
It's the municipals that need it.
We gotta call that Vermont Public Power Group up there on Route 100 that manages a lot of their
That's right,
Yeah.
interaction.
that's Julia.
but it's, the request came from BEPSA, Vermont Electric, Washington Electric, Green Mountain Power, Burlington, and Belco was the original.
It's those little guys that they're,
So
the
12
big-
communities, or maybe they're down to 11 communities now.
Because if Barton just got bought. Well, we don't want to duplicate, so,
Right.
but John Morley, he used to set up stairs. He's
I know, but he's just with one, and they're asking it on behalf of all of them.
I mean, I met with Mari about.
Well, Betsy then is who you want to get hold of. Up there in Waterbury, between Stowe and Waterbury.
Well, there's making additional advancement forwarded by Candace Morgan of GMP on behalf of Vermont Utilities. So it's really confusing as to who is being included here. And whether we're talking about the small ones, the municipal ones, or whether we're talking about all the utilities. You don't represent them, do you, Rebecca?
I do not.
Okay.
Come on, I'm not even.
So rather than our attempting to.
So-
Jamie Feens represents.
Yeah, so do you want Julia's number?
I have it on my desk, but
Okay.
Well, I have it right here.
Yeah, okay, cool. So your question, Bobby, in 2009, several utilities, BED, Green Mountain Power, Stowe, and Vermont Electric Co-op received federal funding to cover 50% of the cost of the AMI.
50%.
Yeah.
50.
So
They
they
did
covered
that only get asked.
And that was through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act.
That's error.
That was Arrow.
That was Arrow
Because we
back
didn't
in the
have
day.
significant.
And
CDBG money.
but that's what they did the smart meters with at BD, Green Mountain Power, Stowe, and Vermont Electric Co-op. Because you asked that question.
Washington wasn't in there.
So Washington Electric wasn't in and the municipals weren't in.
I know, the municipals are the ones that.
Right.
Need.
Except for Stowe and Burlington.
Yeah, they got in, the big ones, 2 big ones. Yeah, that Betsy outfit.
Well, they represent the 11 municipals.
Right, yeah, they're the ones that we need to talk to, or if you want to talk to them.
Well, but then Lewis Porter is not one of them,
Oh,
and
a
he's
member,
asking for
isn't he?
money. So we need to be clear on who is included here. And are we talking about something that is different than the February 17th memo that said they will share 50% and the state 50%?
So Louis, Washington isn't part of that, Betsy?
No.
No.
It says the 11 municipal members.
So we'd have to do Washington Electric and.
I don't know. We need to be clear on exactly what we're doing. So, we need to get that clarified.
They didn't receive any of this federal money for whatever reason, the utilities.
Well, it seems to me what they're saying is to, that they will have access to the federal IIJA money, but they need to have a match.
Yeah.
And and many of those do require a match. The transportation require a match.
Personally, I don't have, no problem helping them with that, because those.
The question is
Well,
5 or 11 or something in between.
Yeah.
The House has 5.
So are you gonna check it out, or who's Stephanie gonna check it? or
So I
Rich
think-
is gonna-
I think
So Rich is sending an email to Drew.
Yeah.
I already did.
Rich is a member of the Washington Electric Board. So I think at this point, Stephanie must be close to 4:30.
Yeah.
It's
4:20.
okay. I'm going to suggest that we adjourn the committee